Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It is 11:44 on a Saturday, beautiful day here in Midcoast, Maine. Fall is just about here. So yeah, I want to thank again all of the new subscribers that we've gotten in the last few weeks, and a lot of the new folks, and a lot of the same people who have been commenting on the videos. I really appreciate it. It's uh, it's all about the love of movies, and it's always so very cool for me to connect with people with that that have the same kind of interest. That's what it's all about. So with this channel, again, I've been back for a week or so. I've been back to kind of a normal schedule with doing these videos and being able to post them, having a little bit more time to do them. I'm back to my regular work schedule also, which allows a lot more time during the day. So yeah, very cool. I've been watching a shit ton of movies and pretty much got through all of the movies that I recently, for the most part, purchased, and that's been a blast. Uh, Again, I'm eager to buy more. So, but again, with this channel, I like to mix things up and always talk about music. Music is a big part of this whole thing, and I've done lots of music videos. Videos pertaining to bands that I really admire and look up to, and that are always a huge kind of source of inspiration for me. Personally, and then also just music that really inspires me when it comes to my band Quantum. And one of the bands that I've been wanting to talk about for a while is Joy Division. Joy Division, and then New Order, and then also the first incarnation of that band, Warsaw. Just an amazing legacy that band has had. And Joy Division, I think that was how I first discovered the band. Was when, I've been a huge Joy Division fan for years and years, and I do believe New Order is still in existence. They still tour, and they still sound really great. I've been wanting to get a chance to see them live until because I know it's probably not gonna you know they might not be around forever. They're one of those seminal bands, and I've seen a lot of recent footage of them performing. I ran into somebody about a month ago who had seen them play in California like a couple of years ago. It's amazing the legacy, and they have such an interesting trajectory as a band, and where they re basically came back as a new entity, in three different under three different titles. And one of the reasons that this whole idea came, this was a band that I've been wanting to talk about anyway. Um, because of the deep connection with, indie rock. I grew up listening to a lot of punk music and indie rock, and then especially for my deep love of electronic music, and tracing things back as far as the lineage of when certain styles kind of originated. And Joy Division was one of those bands that really bridged the gap for me with electronic music and punk rock and rock music. They were one of the most um, kind of pioneering bands at that time. They were one of the first bands, like, and we're talking, in the 70s, like 1976, when they pretty much started or became Joy Division. Before that, they were a band. They were under the title of Warsaw, which is really great stuff too. I got into some of that music before, and when I think that this stuff is like, almost 50 years old, uh, and their entire legacy as a band is pretty astounding. But when Joy Division really came into being, they were one of the first punk bands and rock bands that really kind of incorporated electronics and using drum machines and synths, and they kind of gave birth to this whole new scene, and explored ideas of like blending these two styles that weren't really done before. And now it's wild because you think what the legacy that they've established, and since the decade of the 70s, since they've been around, you know now you'd be hard pressed to find a rock band or indie rock band, or even a punk band, a modern rock band now that doesn't have some kind of electronic element to it. I mean, obviously, many years later, you have like LCD Sound System, which is another band that is a huge inspiration for me, that I will eventually do a show on, which I should do a show on. But you'd be hard pressed now to find an indie rock band or a punk band that doesn't incorporate some kind of electronic element. And Joy Division, when they moved, they went through a lot of tragedy also, and I'm going to get into all those things too. But when they kind of rose from the ashes again, and when Ian Curtis, their singer, committed suicide, they came back as New Order, and they kind of went on to become even a bigger band, reach a higher level of success. But the whole like trajectory of their sound, like they early on in Joy Division's career, they had elements of electronic music or hints of it, and then later on they incorporated more and more of those sounds, and then Joy Division, emerged into New Order, where it was like this fully realized electronic project. And one of the most, when it comes to dance music, electronic music, I mean, for me, my own taste of music, my favorite style, which I've mentioned many times, is electronic music. And I listen to a ton of jazz. Like those two styles are my favorite. But again, I'm at the end of the day, I still feel like I'm a rock guy. Like I play mostly in rock bands now, and jazz is something, as far as practicing as a musician, that's something I'm always working on. I don't really have the opportunity as much now to play jazz, but that's something I'm always working on, and I listen to tons of it. But rock and indie rock, punk rock, all that stuff, metal, that's kind of, that's just in my DNA because I grew up playing in bands and listening to all of that music. But when it comes down to those styles, like electronic music is the thing, and New Order was such a massive influence on all things electronic. Like it's staggering. And when I was down like 2 weeks ago. I went on a little mini tour with Osmia, which is the band I've been playing with since December of this year, which is a really fabulous band. Just love playing with these guys. We're actually going to be doing some recording pretty soon. We're going to start recording um, on Monday morning. And when we went on this little mini tour about 2 weeks ago, we went to this really cool record shop down in, I believe is in, we had a show we played at this big music festival in Rhode Island. And Rhode Island is a super cool city. It's my second time going down there. We played earlier this year with Osmia. We played a show at this same venue down in Rhode Island, and such a cool, rich culture of music there. There's a lot of great bands. There's a lot of great punk bands. A lot of interesting original music. There's a lot of noise music that kind of comes out of the town. It's a really cool scene, and I was, I didn't know much about, I had driven in my travels, had driven by Rhode Island or passed through there, but I never spent any time there, and I had never played any gigs. And this was our second gig in that city, and it's a great town. It's a really cool space. I was really impressed. But we went on our last trip there. We went to this really sweet record shop, and I got this really awesome uh, Joy Division set, and it's from 1979. It's a remaster of a live concert of theirs from '79, and then it's also got a studio album, and it's all remastered. And listening to this since I got it, and again, I've been a massive fan of these guys forever, and especially I have to say probably I gravitate more a little bit more just because of my deep love of electronic music. I probably dive or gravitate a little bit deeper to you know to New Order, but that being said, massive Joy Division fan, and so I got this collection, and it's amazing. I got it pretty cheap. It's just incredible, and listening to this music, like there's a live recording and then also a studio recording, and it came out. It was recorded in 1979, and listening to this, I put it in, not really looking at the liner notes, and I'm like, wow, this is just incredible. And my first impression, because this was my first time listening to this live album, and my first impression was like, man, this feels like it came out in 2025. Like it just feels so fresh. It feels new. It's super dark. It's really raw. It's a lot of people attribute the whole kind of emo or goth scene being attributed to what they created as a band, which is definitely a part of it. Um, but really intense, and it just feels so fresh. And afterwards, I'm like, I was looking, and I've listened to this album a couple times, both uh, CDs, and then I went and checked the liner notes, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe this came out in '79. Like it's wild. Like it feels like it came out in 2025, and that's really testimony to how incredible this band was. And again, they still are technically around as under the name of Joy Division. And it wasn't until about like how I got into this band. I Joy Division was a band that I discovered. You know, uh, geez, so many years ago, and it wasn't until about 15 years ago that a friend of mine at that time turned me on to Warsaw, which was the first kind of incarnation of this band. And that's much more kind of stripped down punk music, but it's incredible. And I believe they put out one record, and then they changed their name to Joy Division, and just incredible. And they have this very dark and a brooding sound, obviously, and they the name itself, Joy Division, obviously very the origins of how they came up with the name is obviously very pretty intense. But they were basically they came up with this name or these names for Warsaw and then Joy Division as the names that the Nazis had named these. They had two concentration camps during World War II, and they were named after those concentration camps. So you kind of know what you're getting into with this music because it's very intense, um, very dark. But I think there's something optimistic, about their music. And Ian Curtis, who was the singer of the band who killed himself kind of at the height of their power with Joy Division. Was a and of course that was a major tragedy that really shook up the world of rock, and obviously with Joy Division, and then they eventually rose from the ashes and became New Order. There's a movie that I think, for my money, is like the best biopic of an artist, because it's really hard to make a movie about a true artist. A lot of the times with movies that do biopic, the biopic genre, just as itself, a lot of the times I find, at least in my own taste, it's a lot of those movies that try to take on some kind of rock icon who might have died or passed away. It's always riddled with a lot of cliche things. It doesn't really, and to a degree, it's kind of sensationalized and with, and it seems a lot of those films seem so preoccupied with just trying to get people to see the movie as opposed to just telling the story, and they're always marred down with like that cliche thing, and just getting, not really focusing on the human story. And there was a movie called Control that was directed by Anton Corbijn, and it's about Ian Curtis and Joy Division and his suicide. And it's, for me, it's like the best biopic movie I've ever seen about a rock star and his untimely death. It's very, well, it's very depressing, obviously, but it's so insightful. It's really interesting. It's kind of this meditative movie. For me, and for my money, when it comes to biopics, it's the best one around. I used to have it on DVD or Blu-ray, but somebody I knew, who, and I, this is one of the reasons I don't let people borrow Blu-rays anymore or DVDs. He borrowed it or something, and he never gave it back. And he has a couple of my other movies, and he never gave them back to me, and super pissed off by that. And then I never got him back. And so one of those movies was Control, and I never got it back, so I don't have it. But it is a movie that I do want to buy again. It was directed by Anton Corbijn, who is a really, or at that time, this was his first movie that he ever directed. Um, he also well, his background was mainly as a photographer, and he did a lot of famous shots for U2 and Depeche Mode. He did a lot of live photography of concerts of these bands. He was a really world renowned photographer. He used a lot of cool black and white images. Really great. But then he moved into becoming a filmmaker, and his first movie that he did was Control, and it's a biopic about Ian Curtis, and incredible movie, just amazing movie. Um, I came across that movie many years ago. I rented it at Opera House Video, and then I bought it like a few years later, and then of course it disappeared. But amazing movie, and I will eventually get that again. Um, and as far as the rest of the members in the band, all just as equally as important as far as laying the bedwork and groundwork for just all of this incredible music. And of course, starting been talking about Ian Curtis, the founding members of Warsaw, and then later Joy Division, and then New Order. Peter Hook, just an incredible bass player. Bernard Summer, just an amazing person. Such a incredible band. I have a really awesome Blu-ray, or actually it's a DVD, and it's a collection of a bunch of concerts and footage with New Order. Basically, it's a really amazing DVD, and I want to do a show on it. I haven't watched it in a long time, but it came out maybe 10 years ago, and there was a like a modern concert, from that time that was shot. That's actually really good. But then there's all of this really old footage of them, and you really see where they developed as a band, and it's amazing. It's one of the best things ever, and that's a video that I'm gonna eventually watch again and do a show about this incredible band. But yeah, uh, buying this like again, buying this incredible collection got me going with the idea that I need to talk about this band. And just when you think of the legacy of what these guys have been able to do as a band, it's pretty staggering. I can't think of any other band that has you know remained intact for so long, and they have all of these three separate incarnations of the band, with Warsaw, Joy Division, and then New Order. And again, like I said, New Order is still active. I mean, spanning decades. And the amount of records that they have put out, concerts, and just how incredibly ahead of the time they were, and forward thinking, and one of the most influential bands ever, or group of musicians, really, when you think about it. I mean, I really think indie rock and electronic music would and punk music would be different without these guys. Like the legacy is you know at the highest level. And so I felt like after buying this collection, I was like, you know what, I got to talk about these guys, because they're just, I mean, living icons. And just there's no other band in history that I can think of that has kind of followed that kind of trajectory, as far as like changing their name, moving on, and coming out of this, tragedy like they suffered, with Ian Curtis passing, and then being able to become even more influential and even more successful, like, but the same, like, you can hear, and it's interesting because, like, with Warsaw, Joy Division, and New Order, you could tell it's them. They all, like, each there's a really distinct thread, or threads, that tie everything together, obviously, with their sound. Because, and you can hear how it just, how that whole thing that they created, that whole sound, that really was so tied together, and just and how they took this music that was so dark and brooding, but they were able to be uncompromising and innovative, and yet make, uh, you know, reach this huge commercial success, like, pretty unparalleled, but yet still more or less be the same band throughout all of these incarnations. Yeah, super awesome. So I can't recommend by any, check out anything by any, any record these guys have put out. There's a lot of, um, as far as this discography, there's more. New Order has been a band technically longer, so there's even more records with them. But Joy Division, I mean, and Warsaw, I believe only put out one record, but that's amazing too. I can't recommend it enough. And again, it's timeless music, because when I was listening to the set when I bought it, it was just like I had forgotten how old some of this stuff is, and I was like, man, 1979, like, That's just wild to me. It's crazy. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.